Hi there, welcome back. I'm John, this is Shimoda Life. We left you last video with the anticipation of a concrete pour. Pour number 3 for our foundation, which will be the base for our timber frame house, which will go up behind me. Behind me, you'll see forms and braces and screw supports and construction paraphernalia. Those are the forms that are holding up the poured concrete. We poured on Wednesday, which is 3 days before now. So the concrete has been curing 72 hours, and today, it's Saturday, my job is to start pulling off the forms. But, of course, I haven't shared with you the actual pour video yet. That's coming up right now. So sit back. If you watched the last video, you will recall that I said I had a lot of confidence in the forms, but you never know until you pour and see if the forms hold. Well, some of the forms didn't hold. Let's jump into it. Okay, it's pour day. And there is lots of preparation going on. Yeah, it's almost impossible to see what's going on in there. But he seems to be making progress with his technique. He's kind of shoveling all of the dirt towards this back of the form area, and that is going to allow us to kind of push the plastic over top of it.この辺はまだまだ土が結構ありますよね。じゃあ土葉っぱはいかない。そう葉っぱじゃなくて葉っぱだけやってる。それ分かってます。でもバケツに入れられると思いますので、私もう一回やってみる。So the cleanup continues. Luckily the pump truck isn't going to be here till 1 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock now, so we got time. Cleaning out the dirt. So we got a late start on Wednesday. The concrete company had a previous pour booked already for that day. And they said, if I take a 1 o'clock start time instead of a 9 a.m. start time, then I'll get a little bit of a discount, both from the pump guy and the concrete guy. So I said, sure, why not? We weren't pouring a slab, so there wasn't going to be a lot of smoothing and hand holding the concrete, unlike when you pour a slab. So I thought we can start at 1 o'clock, and that's what we did. もう大丈夫でしょう。あれは So I've worked with this crew now. This is my third pour with the same crew. The pump guys are the same, and they're fantastic. I love those guys to death. The smoother guy was here. He was also here on the second floor slab pour. And then Ono-san, who I introduced last week, my construction samurai helper, 75-year-old guy who's running rings around me in some cases. Now, if you've been following, you know that the main part of this pour was the 2-meter wall at the very top. This forms the back of the foundation. It's about 1 foot thick, or 30 centimeters thick, 6.5 feet tall, 2 meters tall, and 11 meters, almost 40 feet long. It's a really important part of the foundation. It's a really important part of the approvals that I received allowing me to build this house. It's acting like a retaining wall back there, keeping any falling rocks away from the house and keeping the house and the family safe. So really important part. And that was, so that's a big part of Wednesday's pour. Yeah, my loveliest helper has arrived. I've got all these men around, and finally my lovely wife has arrived. Okay, final prep is really underway. The last things, we've cleaned out the mud, and most of the mud and the leaves in the back. I'm surprised how much we cleaned out. I couldn't get the cameras in there because I was working too fast and I didn't want to be bothered. The last thing we did was put some styrofoam packing in both sides to get some airflow. These will eventually become vents. After we pour and strip off everything, we'll dig the styrofoam out, and these will become air vents to keep the wood dry, the floor dry, the bottom of the house dry. Okay, we're off to the races. The concrete is flowing. For today's pour, Ono-san was responsible for vibrating, which has been my job at the last 2 pours. And that freed me up to do, video as well as, manage emergencies as they came up and give guidance, because I'm the one most familiar with everything that has to go on. So that was a good delegation of duties. The smoother guy, he was just all over making sure that when we got to a level, it was made smooth and that we were pouring to the correct level. So he was really an important part of the job as well. But I had a little bit of extra free time, more so than usual, and I used it. I had a lot of opinions to share, to tell these guys exactly what was going on in my mind about how this pour should take place. Everybody wasn't on the same page initially about what was going on. So ここまで。この高さは十分だよ。中バイブするべきじゃないですか。外じゃなくて中。これやっぱりこの辺石まで生コンが溢れてこないと困りますので、中にバイブ入れてください。ちょっとかけてもらっていいですか、バイブ。こっち側を外側に、こっちでいいです。こっち。そう、OK。はい、OK。OK。 OK この辺は十分高さはね OKそうほらこれを見てねまだまだ板についてないんだけどまあこの辺全然 OK ですがこの辺は少しぐらい板までうまくいってるよしはいここまでは十分It's exciting. Ah, そうなの? Okay.
ちょっと一回ホースそっちやらせてもらう。
So the first minute or so was a little bit tense because nobody really knew, except me, what was supposed to happen or what I wanted to happen. And so we weren't vibrating properly, we weren't watching for the plank, we weren't watching for the spread of the concrete. So the first minute or so, I was a little bit stressed out. But now everybody seems to be on the same page and having a good laugh. So. We're getting to the end of the run. The mountain is highest at this point, and that means the concrete is actually higher here than it was over on that end. And so the guys have to put in more than they think is necessary.
今さおせえなんだけど、タンカーみんな下へ落ちてんな。
どの
コンクリの中へ。
どれが
俺ら。
嘘。
そう入ってるところあるこの辺。
入ってるけど緩めることはできねえよ。
First little drama here. We poured too much in this area and the bottom pipe is now submerged in concrete. And if we let that set, it's never coming out. So I got to try a little band-aid solution. I don't know if this is gonna work, but we'll give it a try. Which plywood? Got to get under that last one. So the footers, this is where the strengths of a pro really come into play. But my samurai hand, Ono-san, came in, and over the course of two and a half days, from zero, he built a whole bunch of forms here to support our footer. I was really impressed. Now you can see even just what you see behind me here, it's a patchwork, okay? I recognized that immediately, he recognized that, but still he made it work. If I had to walk over a piece of it to get to another area of the site, it was strong underfoot. So I was fully confident that he had built me a great set of forms here.
それか 最後じゃなくてもいいけど。
乾かしていいです。
So what's happening on this part of the video is we just had our first blowout.
はい、直さなきゃ。
ちょっと待って。もうちょこっとですけどね、上から流したいぐらいですね。そこちょっとなんかサポかなんかで押さえます。
サポあるよ。この辺ぐらいでいいですか。オッケー、なんかなんか入れて。
ピンが逆。大ハンバー。あ、持ってる。
I didn't recognize it before the pour. When I was admiring Ono-san's construction of the forms, I was testing with my hands and with my feet the strength of the forms themselves, the strength of the kickers that are holding the forms up. Everything was pretty solid. But after the blowout, I immediately saw why it happened. Let me show you right here. This is the failure point. And you've got a form here and a form here. This screw support is our recovery. It wasn't here at the beginning. When we poured, we only had this support, a lower one, and the same over here, this support and a lower one. There was nothing supporting the actual butt joint where these two forms met. So we got the support in here and we patched it. It took a few seconds only. It wasn't a big problem. But I had discovered, that this failed because of a weak point. And I looked quickly around the rest of the forms and I found another point. Exactly two forms butted up with a little bit of support on either side, but nothing right on the critical seam of the two, where the two forms meet.
じゃあというのはこの辺も壊すかもしれません。何もこのところの裏に何もついてないので、これが壊す。
それは入れてあるから。低いから大丈夫。そっちはね、下糸入れてあるから。
はい、じゃあプロに
だから上だけにした。
プロに任せてます。
And both the pump guy and Ono-san waved me off. Less than 2 minutes later, that seam blew.
というのはこの辺も壊すかもしれません。何もこのところの裏に何もついてないので、これが壊す。
それは入れてあるから。低いから大丈夫。下糸入れてあるから。
はい、じゃあプロに任せてます。
And I want you to look at my bodily reaction. This is frustration bubbling up for a very brief moment. Luckily, I recovered almost immediately, and I threw a joke out there for everybody, and we got some laughs going.
プロが何も言わなかったので大丈夫でしょう。
So we ended the day with 2 blowouts in the same corner, and no real catastrophe. I'm very, very happy. So we've got the footer in there. I'm going to strip them off, and we'll have a look at what it looks like from the outside with no forms very soon.
Yes. ちょっとし 確かこんなボリュームがあるのにこんなもんあんまりやると。
There was a fourth element of the pour that wasn't critical in my mind, but I had Ono-san form it up in case we had excess concrete. And that was these 3 steps on the west side of the house. It's just a really inaccessible part of the house, part of the site. You know, once we had the 2 blowouts on the footer forms, Ono-san was really worried about this one. So we poured a little bit, let it sit. Poured a little bit more, fret it a little bit more, let it sit. Finally, we were able to pour everything on this piece and no issue whatsoever. No blowouts. We heard one crack, and Ono-san, "Stop!" he said. And no more came of that crack. So nothing, we don't know what that crack was, but it didn't turn into anything. We just got started and we're out of concrete. Gotta wait for the next truck. The thing that I like to see here is we left the bottom part long enough that it's set up just a little bit. So as they're pouring this almost 2 meters of concrete on top of that bottom first pour, the bottom part isn't moving or filling or doing anything, which is exactly the way it should be happening. Hi. Well, shit. We're gonna have trouble getting some of this out of here. Okay, that was it. That was the last of the necessary concrete. Now they're gonna check how much is left in the truck, and we're gonna dump it in a pit, in the pit area over there. An important part of the pour, in addition to the 2-meter wall, is the stem walls that are going up on the second floor. You know, the stem walls have to be well done in 2 respects. One, they have to be perfectly flat. So when you start the wood construction and you put the dodai on top of the stem wall, it has to be nice and flat so that the dodai sits flat and becomes the basis for your house. In addition, you have to have your J-bolts or your anchor bolts in the correct position, lined up in a nice straight line, you hope, and sticking out enough so that when you put your dodai on, the screws will stick through. So getting that flat, level surface, the first part of it, is really important. And the leveler came in at the end of the day and poured out this very, very runny, liquidy, cementitious product called, not surprisingly, leveler in Japanese. And that was really important to the final finish. And it looked great going on, and it looks great now. the excess we put in the pit, and perfect volume. We couldn't have planned it better than that. And that was an empty hole that needed to be filled, so it worked out great. So yeah, how to summarize today. I'm very satisfied with the day. The results, you know, we're going to see them in a week or so, and see where we had little imperfections in the forms, and there's going to be a couple of places in the back where we can't actually remove the pipe. It's buried in the concrete now. We had two minor blowouts over here on the footer, but there we patched them up and sorted them out pretty quickly. So all in all, you know, no major mishaps, which is great. So yeah, we've still got a couple of hours of work. The concrete guys, the pump guys, they're wrapping up, winding up their hoses and stuff. And so far, yeah, I think a job well done all day. And I got a $150 discount because they started at 1 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock. So good.
今日はコンクリート3回目打ったよ、で今日お手伝いしてくれる方がたくさんいたからもう何もしてなくて
楽しかった？
もう楽しかった。
問題も終わりました？
ない、
なかった？
ちょっとなんかコンクリートが溢れそうになったけど、まあ大丈夫だった。だからまあそこのギャップが埋めれて嬉しい。危なかったから良かったです。
何が危なかった？
落ちそうだったいつも。
あ、そう。
そう落ちそう危ないなと思ったけど、もう大丈夫。まっすぐ歩ける。
大丈夫になってて。
大丈夫になった。あとここも良かったね。ブロックじゃなくなったからすごい良かった。
それで次の作業はいつになる？
ちょっと
あゆみちゃんの。
私の作業？わかんない。
じゃあ来週から。
来週ぐらい。
OK。